439.
I will note, Chair Farrell, that everyone is in attendance, say Ms. Solis and Ms. Nájera, and Pam is not in attendance and will not be here for the foreseeable future. Let me let the board know that Ms. Sana will be here tomorrow for our retreat as well as on Saturday. And I told the chair that I would try to fill Pam's shoes for this meeting. So you call the meeting to order at 4:39, and again, everyone is here, save Ms. Solis, who called and apologized, and Ms. Nájera, who's out of town.
Okay. Anyone here for public comment? What time is the time? Okay. What one? I'll jump.
Chair Fierro, board members, afternoon. I'll start with a brief update of all projects. Trans Mountain, we do have some good news. We finally got a plan from El Paso Electric to start working on Monday. It'll take them about 2 weeks, so in about 2 weeks, we should start seeing heavy activity again from the contractor. As far as the project schedule, we probably need to update it, and the hydraulic lines, which could be addressed as deferred maintenance. We talked about that last time. As far as the Viagrass PVC, the work is in progress. They're excavating and the pad is being built. We'll have the first time-lapse camera up here very soon, and we'll be glad to share the link whenever that's up. And we'll have a furniture meeting with the committee and students on Friday. Northwest, we're generally getting the drawings on April 18th, which is next Wednesday. And the following Monday, we're hoping to advertise for Northwest. And we actually have an update with the Northwest team and let them know what to expect. And they all seem pretty content with what they've been against. So it was a very positive meeting. Rio Grande, we're still in the process. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question about the Trans Mountain?
Yes, ma'am.
Or actually, any of the campuses, because I was looking to see if there was a way for us to do more advertisement. You know, like we have the EPCC and all that, but over there it's kind of faded. And since we have these companies there, is there a way that we could find out how much it would cost to either put new signs, big ones, or retouch the ones? Because we're going to have these new buildings with faded signs that have the name of a school, and I guess maybe we should have thought about it.
The wayfinding portion will be funding new signs.
For the whole campus, not
Whole
just the
campus.
projects.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll be having our first meeting, probably in a couple of weeks.
And Dr. Graham, you remember a couple months ago, we directed, to work with someone to do the designs for all the campuses, the new campus buildings we're putting up for wayfinding.
Dr. Graham is asking a good question. The wayfinding, I agree, and thank you, Mr. Ronald, for chiming in. But monument signing,
I see.
that's really what Dr. Graham is
Yeah,
referring
because
to.
if you're coming like
Okay.
close to Bassett Center, there's this humongous signs for Western Technical. You know, and then we look at our signs, and they're little bitty signs, and they are faded.
Except Northwest. This is rather large.
It's large, but it's faded.
Correct.
It doesn't have that bright color, so I know that those are expensive when I guess you rent them. You know, what are they, like $5,000 or something?
No, Dr. Graham, I'm not the monument signs I'm a big fan of. The sign with the electronic, those are always tricky because they break down and things of that nature that people want to advertise on. So we have company, and there was a contract that we had that they wanted to do all the campuses. I think that is fine with Mr. Gouges here. That is done, or do we still have that contract? For instance, the signage at Valle Verde, and I can't remember where else.
Yeah, that contract is still in place. Then there's some details about that contract that has to be ironed out. But it does, we could exercise that contract if we cleared up some of those details.
But I am more of, I really like monument signs. So for instance, a 4-foot concrete that then has, I've seen them in granite as well. Obviously, that's a whole different cost analysis. But then has, El Paso Community College, Playa Verde campus, or El Paso Community College, Trans Mountain campus. That is what I think you're really referring to.
Right.
Those I really like.
And then, the ones that are also high, that while you're driving,
You see it.
you see them, either if you're going on the freeway I-10 or the other one, you can see the signs. Only because if we had a way to capture that type of advertisement, we wouldn't necessarily have to be paying for it versus us having to, pay a lot of money for a monthly fee or whatever for advertising.
So you're referring to signage that's outside our campuses?
Both, they need to be identified as, it's publicity for the campus. Anyway, I just thought we had the companies there, but yeah, you're right, maybe it's a different company that does that kind of stuff. Okay, thank you, sir.
So, with Rio Grande, as far as the temporary parking, we're still analyzing what options are available. We were able to determine that Stanton is not available. I think Mr. Lara called EPSD, and they said that they're gonna need that for lay down space for the contractor.
We should have held out for that other 400,000.
Wait, do we have any alternatives? I mean, I looked at, I accidentally passed by that lot you all were referring to last time. There was a corner lot near the campus.
It's done right now.
The dirt corner line, it's
Right.
right K corner of campus.
There was a time limit.
It's gonna be fine, open park 14 cars, and
Right.
everything, but then we have to
Yes,
pay for it.
right.
In a sense, that high school would be up and on, so we're gonna work for it, so.
Can we put and then there was another one by Mesa, but it's a bank or something parking lot. But they have a food truck there, so they're not using it, somebody's not using it. But they're just, again, it's a very small.
We're looking at those major lots that the churches own, we're gonna reach out to them, of
And
course.
they do have
Yes.
substantial parking, because I've only seen it on the Mesa side, there's not a whole lot of parking.
Not immediate, and then like one street back, then there was a.
Oh, I
church,
see,
the first
okay.
stage. And unfortunately, yes, the students have to cross Mason and go one back, but it, as you said, in the area, there's only major lots that have over 100 cars. So,
The Holocaust Museum isn't available during the day, but they only have,
2.5.
no, they only have like 40 spaces.
I would say 40.
Yeah.
That's what we thought.
How many spaces is the cathedral?
Oh, I saw over 100, like 113 or so, something like that. And the Methodist has over 100, like 97, 100, something like that. So it would be ideal. And Mr. Torres from Physical Plant told us that before you guys have rented it on that Methodist lot before. Yes.
Oh, that's good.
That's what they did with this new high school. The church is the one providing the parking lot.
Oh, across the street?
It says they're not using it during days on Sundays, we would, so.
Luckily, there's two churches, one on one side and one on the other.
We'll continue to investigate.
For Rio Grande, the evaluation committee met April 6th, Friday, and decided on recommended contractor for that project, and I'll cover that in a little much more detail. As far as the rezoning meeting, the city council meeting will be on Tuesday. We're like number 21 in the agenda, so.
21?
Pardon? 21,
21.
it's the whole day thing, so we're gonna tag team as far as being there.
I'll show.
Either tag team or not, it's the whole day.
Do you have any inclination as to what they're gonna do?
I firmly believe they'll be okay with it. And they actually put us, you saw was on some sort of
It's
live,
interesting. They had categories within there, and they talked about what's the benefit to the city basically of passing these things? And ours was under improving the cityscape, improving the, so it's presented that way. It seems very positive. That's all I can say.
We feel pretty good about that.
We do feel good
We're
about
not
our
gonna be
chances.
overconfident.
You,
The staff's gonna recommend.
Yes, that's
definitely.
correct, that's a good point, yeah.
Staff recommends, they're gonna note that CPC was in support as well, City Planning Commission, so.
and I understand Sunset Heights is gonna write a letter of support also.
Really?
Really?
That's fantastic.
Wow.
What happened before?
What?
That's a lot right there.
Let's soak that one in a little bit, because that's great. That's fantastic.
Cito said he was gonna go to the last meeting, and give public comment in support of it.
He's the one that sent a letter against it.
Yeah. Well, that's terrific. Very good. Well, okay, good. And right now, we, since the college purchased KTXC, I believe? KTSM. The KTSM is gonna need some IT to it, so we're gonna work with IT in terms of extending the IT service that we have right now, to extend it before even the project gets going, to try to get that done as soon as possible, so KTSM can have that service provided to them.
Feel free to turn off their electricity while you're doing work. They don't need sheets.
Oh, no.
I'll write that down.
Via Verde, we discussed this internally, and we just Mr. Gallardo on the furniture, and we concurred that it'd probably be better to wait till the fall, because models and furniture change a lot, so we thought it would be, rather than do it now as the semester ends, just like wait till the fall, there's plenty of time, and by then we'll have something a little more updated. As far as the groundbreaking, Carrie, fantastic job. That was great. That really
She can
went
just
well.
figure out a way to keep the signs from going down.
Double stick
She had
tape.
people positioned to put them up. Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, great job, great crowd too. The final executed contract with HB, we anticipated probably tomorrow, a notice to proceed, maybe or early next week, and then 5 days after that, we'll be able to actually start breaking ground and going at it. The architect on Mission Del Paso, they'll issue the 95% pre-final drawings on March 28th. Now, the cost estimators really are under the gun to get us a good estimate, so they requested a little more time and we granted to them. So by Friday, we ought to have a pretty good idea of the estimates and see where the, yes, sir?
That's tomorrow?
Yes, sir. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, tomorrow. So by tomorrow we ought to have a pretty good idea what it's looking like. As far as after we get that cost estimate, we'll certainly review and then make some recommendations in response to what estimates there was.
Judge Hyder was talking, and I forgot to ask this question. How far behind are we gonna be on Rio Grande?
Rio Grande.
Assuming we get approved.
We're looking. I believe it's May.
Looking probably May.
May of next year. So we'll be ready.
May of 2020.
2020, yeah. And
Two-year project.
yes, and probably, I mean, if you want to
About
move in the
6 months.
summer, you're probably able to do that. But the moving in the spring is basically out.
It is so.
Yeah, it's just, we did put it, as far in the proposal, we did put a clause in there, if you speed up the schedule, but the numbers were so high, they basically told us they wouldn't do it, or they would do it for a lot of money. So now we're gonna get into the action item, which is the competitive sale proposals for the Rio Grande Class Lab construction services. The news are not necessarily very good. Let me preface by saying that. Right now, this is, hopefully you can see this. We only had 4 proposals and only 2 proposals from our class. It was
there was not much money, and I'll go over into this one we think that is. The lowest one and the firm that got determined to be the best value, it was Airly from El Paso, certainly a very, very qualified construction company. Lots of
Very
exp-
what?
Very qualified construction company. They're very good and they're very reasonable. And the number here that you see here is the base proposal, but to be realistic, they excluded, and this was just to isolate the number. We need to be using base proposal number one together, because often the number one is the finish out of the sixth floor, which everybody's made a point that they want, we have to have. So this was more of an exercise to identify how much that costs. But when we look at these, and you'll see in a little while I have the charts, you have to consider element one as being part of the cost, of the base cost. So when it comes to that, as you can tell, we're considerably out over, and I'll explain in a little while. We created a number of alternates. What we did, and a little more detail in a little while. We decided to create a lot of alternates, try to do a value engineering exercise ahead of time. So that's why you see all these elements. Our recommendation is going to be that you actually accept them. They are certainly not absolutely essential, but they're certainly, it would hurt the building occupants and physical plant and not to have these items. And so I'm going to go over each one of them so hopefully you'll be able to understand or reason why we recommend those alternates. It really altogether, it's not really a whole lot. So starting with the first one, 6th floor finish out, that goes without saying, it's just a finish out of the second 6th floor, and this is one thing we absolutely have to have. Yes, sir.
Finish out just means that it's classroom ready, right?
Yes, it's ready to be occupied. Okay. See, if it's a shell space, you don't have the interior partitions, it's just basically a shell. You know, there's no finish on the painting, it's just a big area. And then later on you come and bring somebody in. The advantage of doing it now, obviously, is hospitals do this all the time. They come in and isolate an area to work on it, but it's much more costly and it's much more disruptive. So our recommendation, obviously, is we have to go with this because it's a big part of, it's half of the program you have there.
But what I'm saying is when you finish out, that means it's classroom ready.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
With furniture and.
I just want to make sure I understood you.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. So then we have this additional elevator that if you look at, this is the floor plan, just to give you an idea how many elevators you already have. You have two, and that one there, this one is the one that we're saying we really definitely don't have to have it. We have a freight elevator here, we have an elevator at this end, we have an elevator at this end. We don't, now, the nice thing about on the base bid that's included in the proposal is, I'm going to enlarge this area here, is that you actually leave the shafting there ready for an elevator to be put in there. And there's a knockout panel here. They can just knock out and do an opening for the elevator. So in other words, if you later on you decide, I really want this elevator, it's not like you have to go in there and dig a hole in the slab all the way out in a very disruptive. This way you could just bring a cab in and install the elevator at a later time. So for that reason,
Remind me why we added another elevator?
I think it was more of a convenience issue.
The faculty requested it, we've had so much trouble with the elevators at Rio Grande.
Understood.
And so they were very concerned that even though we had the freight elevator, so we can move beds and people in it, they were concerned that having one on each side was still be a problem.
Okay.
So the
Can you go back one, please?
yes, sir.
Okay, so the additional that we're leaving out is one with the X.
Yes, sir.
And the one beside it, is that the freight elevator?
No. This is just a regular passenger elevator.
Okay, which one's the freight
The
elevator?
freight elevator is this one here.
Okay, and it's larger?
Yes, sir.
But it'll be used for people also.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
But we'll be able to move hospital beds up and
No,
down.
I think we need, but I just want to make sure that we're just not going to dedicate it to. Okay.
So in the event that one is not working,
You still have two.
We have
more.
two.
Still got two more left. Yes, ma'am.
And what about the one in the old building? Did we ever resolve that issue? I know that's not
Fixed it,
you.
I know we fixed it, but We have not added a second. It is, it's something that we need to look at and probably can discuss.
The one right by the river?
No,
No, the other building.
we fixed it, it was difficult to fix.
Oh, what's
I'm not, don't want to quibble with your architect, but if they, I just asked him, might think about the doorway from the hallway, then you have two open doors, and then you're gonna have to make a turn, and then go through a door, and then you go into that. You know, if there's some way they may reconfigure the door, so it's like, particularly if you're gonna start moving beds and patients, the last thing you wanna do is be jogging around like that, so I would just ask them to rethink that access from the.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, we have to create an elevator lobby and actually have those doors will probably be pinned open during the day. And then, like on magnets, and if there's a fire, then they'll shut. So those doors will most likely be, which you have to form an elevator lobby by code, a fire rated area, so. But I believe
Do you get a sliding door that also meets code?
that would be good.
No,
It's like there's something good.
Okay.
And these,
David, actually, what I'm thinking about this, does this need to be a double door, or is that big enough to get a bed either? Because if we're gonna be taking beds in there, you have double beds here, but here you might be.
well, that's a closet. No.
Oh, this is a freight elevator?
Well, no, that's not the door of the freight elevator, that's the door of the mechanical hall.
Ah, it comes through here.
Yes, exactly.
I got you, okay, very good.
Sorry, it's not
All right,
section.
no, I
So
was
it's
totally misreading that, yeah.
Did you understand that, Mr. Ochoa?
No,
So it's making mean that the door that we're all looking at is not really a door.
That's a door, it's not a door.
This is a double door, but this is a closet here. I was thinking.
So how do you get into the freight elevator?
Right through here.
Oh, so then you have to go around and make another turn and make another turn.
Yeah, but this is wide enough, shouldn't be too hard. I mean, it looks like there's enough clearance here.
I'm just
No,
thinking about,
but we will point that out to the.
yeah, I was just thinking of it, just to look at it again, because I mean, you can start turning those beds and everything else, it's.
We need to give the students practice.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a good point, though, yeah.
And if you notice, it's $155,000 that we propose non-spend. Going on to the next one, this one's affectionately known as Mr. Lovato's penthouse.
Or Dr. Grace.
This one is absolutely, I would highly recommend this one, because if you don't have, right now, is that penthouse there, and if you notice two elevators, this one now, we wouldn't have this elevator, but this elevator would definitely come up, and there's a stair here. And when you're getting up there to access the HVAC, the mechanical units, you just, otherwise we'd have to get cranes and
We have a
so.
large component failure, we won't be able to get off the roof.
Yeah.
Sure, we're pushing it off.
What is that? Is that where
It's broken.
That's just the extension of the freight elevator, so that you move it to the.
To the next level, so we can get to the freight elevator.
It is the freight
It is.
elevator.
Freight elevator, oh, it is, the freight, is that
It
the
is.
corner?
It has to be.
Oh, yes. it's-
So we have two freight elevators.
No, I think just the freight elevator comes up and the stairs comes up, like you said, there's one elevator. It's the freight elevator, definitely. The freight elevator is that.
Okay. All right, so there's your answer. So this one we highly recommend it. It's $165,000. The cost of each element is here, just in case you remember.
165 for the penthouse?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope you guys are gonna share it.
So it doesn't need a liquor license.
Okay, the next one is these exterior controls, solar control devices. If you get that section through this, it's basically these teal overhangs here, these eyebrows. And the buildings, they ran the energy calculations. The building certainly can function without them. But from a aesthetic standpoint.
No, but then it's gonna look ugly.
That's exactly it. And from a aesthetic standpoint, we really recommend it. And it always helps to use a little more shade to the windows.
What is it, just a mini shade?
No, it's just a little eyebrow. It's this, it
An
kind
eyebrow,
of sticks
okay.
out like
A
that.
little bit of money, a little bit of money.
Yeah, see right here, shift control glasses. It's like if you get a section through it, that's what they look like.
If you said aluminum, how will it stand up to hail?
Good question.
As well as anything else. They're
Probably
very durable.
did.
Those are very durable, they're
Okay.
very robust.
Is it
That's a
insured?
good question.
Pardon?
We had hail insurance.
Okay.
Yes. I'm more worried about them damaging when they're cleaning the windows. But I think the architect designed holes in them, right, so that
Correct, the window washing system is integrated with these, and it's something that came up when we verified my physical plan a long time ago. It's like, it's a concern, otherwise you couldn't wash the window. So.
You have the next one, it's pretty much self-explanatory, just adding some metal shelving and millwork in the storage rooms, and obviously that would be very helpful for the staff. The next one is for additional head walls. If you're not familiar with the hospital equipment, that's what a head wall looks like. They're about $1,500 a piece, $6,000 total. It's almost be a no-brainer. Yes, sir.
There's 4 now.
Yeah, the others are included in the project, but these were 4 additional ones, in fact, that we came up with.
You have an opportunity to ask for 6 or 8 right now.
Oh, we have more than 4.
For $1,500, you can ask for more.
It's already got
Okay, this is not going to run.
All right. Well, we can get,
Yeah.
she's right, we can get, gosh, 100 more if we don't have that additional elevator. At $1,500 a piece.
So what exactly is the head wall?
It's this component here.
Oh,
When you're in the hospital, if you look at the bed, you've got the lights and the plug-ins and the oxygen and stuff.
is that like modern enough to the hospitals of today?
State of the art.
The next one is another one that we feel is pretty necessary as well. It's vehicle guardrails. You see where this red line is along here to protect the stucco from getting in from cars that go back and forth.
And the last stucco, is it graffiti proof?
I wouldn't say proof, no. I'm afraid not. The next one is video security upgrade. This is a request from the police department. The resolution is better and the angle of view is better too. And as you can tell, it's $28,000. So we'll put that as a nominee as well. So the proposal's timeline, I just want to give you an idea where we've been and in terms of costs and proposal amounts. We started with Trans Mountain and then right on budget. This line here is 0%, means literally right on budget. So we went from in November, the third week in November, from being basically on budget to be under budget by 21% on the second week in December. Then we jumped way up, as you can recall, on Northwest after the holidays, the second week in January. And then we came back down with Valle Verde at 3.73 over. And this is all base bids, doesn't include any alternate. Now, when we had this next one, Rio Grande, we went back up to 25.85% over budget, basically 26%. The 11.9 is if you took the 6-floor shelling. Basically, we're comparing base bid.
Proposals.
Base proposals, thank you. Base proposals. Thank you. Base proposals. And so, in this particular case, I'm indicating that, but really, to be honest, we need to be considering this because the 6th floor is really not an option as an option. So that being said, then I actually talked with Jerry, with the GE Architecture, and I was inquiring about what has been happening in the meantime in terms of projects that have been out there. And he told me of 2 projects. His last Fine Arts building, it was right here. The last week in March was 22.22%, and then there's ETIC facility out at Bowie, also late March at 60.34%. So certainly the trend seems to be that the more and more this will progress, at least in the near term, within a year and a half. It certainly seems like it's going to get worse before it gets better. So
there's a big difference.
Yes, ma'am.
Their boards don't pay attention to the numbers and the dollars.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why they're 60%. No, I couldn't agree more. So the prior to receiving proposals, one thing I kind of wanted to explain is that we actually added, because we were so concerned, this is right off the Northwest, we were real concerned about Rio Grande, so we actually added an extra estimate right at the end of the drawings. I mean, it was very shortly before the drawings went out to really give us another sense of confidence that we could put it out on the street. Of course, we can see how that turned out, but the bottom line is that the estimates at that time, they both agreed that for 25 million, they'll get us the base bid. That should be base proposal. Oh my goodness. Ruben, forgive me. The base proposal and the 6th floor complete build out. And as you recall, back in November, I mentioned that we were about 2 million over. And that would have not been a surprise. That being said, we said, well, let's see if we can actually go through a VE exercise to see what we can subtract from that amount. And that's where we get the alternates. That's why you see so many alternates in this particular project, because all those items were like, yes, they're needed, but can we do without them? And so that was part of the reason we did those elements as well. So why were the proposals so high? We actually got back to both estimators, our estimator and the estimator for PSC, and they basically said there's not an objective can completely explain it. But one of the things they said is commodity changes very recently changed considerably. Steel's up by 15%, copper by 18%. They couldn't get the contractors to actually give them a hard number on the oil and oil related products, but it says they certainly a factor. Market saturation. We got all this work out there, and we got very limited amount of subs. There's just not enough for the market. And I think that's part of the reason you saw in our project, 2 out-of-town firms coming in, because they see an opportunity there to quickly make some money because the local ones are so exhausted. In general, we're in a volatile market. I mean, that's the bottom line. Other possible factors that they told us about, they're not as objective, and they're certainly more speculative, but certainly worth considering, is the Saturday construction market, also the lack of interest in the project. Again, we only had 2 local, and this is a good-sized project. This is 24 or 25 million. Only 2 local firms, CF Jordan Arrow, show any kind of interest in the project. One of the things they said is, with all this work out there and all this political turmoil also related to the project, we've been in the news and there's been some issues with this local commission. They really, contractors usually want to stay clear of that. And of course they will take it if they need it, but if they don't need it, they just as soon stay away from it. And also the complexity. It is a very challenging project. And they all, in their estimates, they do scaffolding, barricades, cranes. They accounted for all those in their estimates. What they did not attend was there's no way to assign a dollar value to things like restricted access, urban site. A lot of these are very subjective. It certainly factors, but how much do you put in there to account for that? So that being said, going through the selection process, you obviously can read this, so I enlarged it a little bit so you could see how the numbers came in. And Arrow Building was the selected firm by the committee.
Is that a local one?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And they're very good too. So and they have a lot of experience with garages too, which is good.
Have we ever done any work with Arrow? We have not. I thought we had.
Not in my time.
Not in the last 11 years.
No, but we have this year in past, we've managed 2 garages with them. The Golden Road parking garage that is adjacent to the Don Haskins Center, which is kind of a similar characteristics to this.
They're the ones that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then the Convac project at the airport, which is also a significant project because they managed, we managed it with them. We've done other smaller projects, but they certainly have the experience.
So they know what they're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. So basically, what are the options? And I'm laying them all on the table, I'm not necessarily recommending who's the first group. Not building the project's time, pay for it, and wait a couple of years, but my understanding is this is a very important project for the West Community College, so I don't think this should be something hopefully we consider. Make severe cuts coming to budget. Honestly, it's almost better than to just pay it, because you heard it so much we really, this is a project we really went through it over and over again, see what else we can cut, but there's really nothing left to cut. We've accepted the alternates, that's it. So we don't think we should recommend that as well. The other option, we could build the base bid only, shell the 6th floor, but then we still need additional 2.7 million. You won't need as much money, but you still need that amount. And then finally, which is the one we recommend, is, and I'll go into a lot more detail in a minute over this, is strategically go over the budget, analyze particularly the contingencies we have in place, and try to see if we can get the $6,392,582 that we need to make up for without getting any additional funding. Because the assumption right now is that we're not getting additional funding. So what I'm going to basically describe to you, it's a risk, but it's a calculated risk. It's still something I think we can deal with. So if you bear with me, that's the number we're looking for. Now, I'm not magically come up with that number. I worked backwards from the number. Basically what I did was, because you're going to say, how in the world, this is the number, I worked from this number saying, how can I get to this number? So you'll see I did get to that number, and I'll show you how I got to it, and then obviously it's up to you to decide on what you think. So this is the budget as it stands right now. This is what we have, and we have a line item here, the contingency. And the contingency is, as you probably know, but I figure I might as well go over it one more time, it is if you decide, okay, I want to add some scope, that's where we go. If there's some conditions underground you run into you didn't anticipate, if there's a requirement from the city that comes out of the blue that we didn't realize there was required, if there's additional fees, we use contingency. There's also designs, errors, and omissions. Now, on this one, depending on the amount and the severity of the errors and omissions, because if it's considerable, then they have, the architect has insurance to cover those things. Hire professional services during construction. A perfect example is that entryway, for example, that we had at Via Verde PTC. We had to pay the architect to redesign to get construction documents. I went to contingency and covered that, and also for the cost to build it. So now, a thing about contingency, as construction develops, it increasingly goes down. There's a drawdown rate for that contingency. So when you typically start at 10%, I'm pointing out at you, 10%, by the time, you always want, in my opinion, at least 1%, but it's between 0.5% and 1% at the end, just in case there's some things like if the accessible inspector comes in and says, hey, you need to change these guardrails because it doesn't comply with ADA, then we have a little bit to cover those kind of little unanticipated things. But in general, this is a rule of thumb starting at 10%. This, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that, between the red lines, is that the 10%? Is that basically a 10%?
This is, they vary up and down a little bit, but in general, they're in the.
That's nominally the 10%?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's all I know.
Okay. So basically, what we did is we said, okay, let's analyze each project and look at the contingency. There's one exception that we look at furniture as well. But what we did is let's see how much we can capture by going to a 5% minimum contingency. Again, it's a risk, but it's something we feel under normal circumstances we will be able to manage. but I want you to understand there is a risk involved of doing that. We're doing, I'm sorry, Mel, did you have something to say?
No, no, no.
Oh, okay, so what we did, and I'll give you, and you really didn't read it very well, and I apologize, I need to do it better. So what we did is, for example, just go over one of these as an example of what we did. As you can tell, here's the budget. These numbers are here. That's the current number. The proposed ones, as you can tell, they're all the same. But when you get to contingency, we say, okay, how much can we take out? Like, for example, Valle Verde, although it's a big project, it's a fairly simple project. It's in a good environment, there's plenty of room, it's flat, plenty of staging area, no parking lots. So we went in there and said, okay, let's get basically 2 million out of Valle Verde. And then we did the same process for each project.
From the contingency.
Yes, ma'am. The only exception was Rio Grande here. We talked to the architects, and there's actually a little bit extra that we can capture on the FF, not furniture, but FF&E. And so I captured that. If you notice, Mission Del Paso and Northwest, they haven't been out. I'm not touching them. I'm leaving them alone because we might very well need it. So
Because,
I'm sorry.
They haven't been bid. I mean,
The fees.
oh, we're still pending the bid on that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so we didn't think it would be smart to do that. We certainly could go back and get some more if it works, but for now. So the bottom line is when you take what we say, the 1,000,009 here, 110,000 there, 1,000,001 there, 392 there, you have a total of 3.63,113. Well, it's not 6.3 million yet, but it's a pretty good bid. Yeah, we're halfway.
You're short 2.7.
Sir?
You're short 2.7.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
show me how you're gonna get 2.7.
So, yeah. So what we did is, okay, this is what's above the line here. The 3.68, we grabbed the 50,000 from expenditure allowance as well. And so from the program subtotal, basically say we have 3.68. Now what we did is, there's some residual funds down here. And it's important to mention that these are institutional funds. The residual funds are institutional, not bond funds.
Which one, the two?
This 2 million, 2.7 million. So, but it's that as residual funds, so we said, well, let's grab that. And so, once that happens, we're there.
Okay, go back, you're talking about institutional funds. Okay, so you got 2.7 now the institution, so how do we do that?
Because here's the total funding. The available to funding is 125 million. So if you subtract, right?
Exactly.
From the 122 program subtotal, you have still these funds remaining. Now, the important thing is that these funds remaining are not, they've been committed, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've been committed, but they are not funds. It's important to note that. But that being said, the funds are there. So if you have these two together, you do get the 6.3 million.
Let me push back a little bit.
Sure.
What happens, and I like that, that you were creative in how you came about with the numbers. But we did reduce the contingency
Right.
on almost all the projects.
Right.
So what happens, how high of a risk are we taking on that? Because I can see that you seem to be comfortable taking, bringing it down.
5% is the minimum. We have 11, 6, 6, 8, 8, 9. So it's not all of it. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'd like to say something. If you want to go back to the new brief explanation on contingency.
Sure.
So this is a risk, and it's a team effort, because we are only managing your project and we're not the decision makers. So what are the risks on a normal project? Underground issues, right? You have, say, a pipe that nobody knew was there and that needs to be relocated. So that's a risk that we have done our best to forecast, and we believe that there is none. We're not doing anything like in the downtown area per se, where you have huge risks of that happening.
So that makes you comfortable that that might not happen like it would in the downtown area?
It makes me comfortable, but I cannot completely guarantee that happens because things happen, right? Like, for instance, we had discussed this hydronic pipe. So the hydronic pipe, we looked at it, how can we repair that, and then, well, we had a cost, but with discussions with physical plant, we realized that the leak was not as severe as initially thought, and it was not a critical aspect that needed to be fixed. So we were able to at least eliminate that risk. So we're not gonna touch that pipe for now. So you see that it's managing the risk and being. Let me just say, the other one, so owner adding scope, that's a huge risk on projects. And I've been part of projects with a different client, I'm not gonna name names, that we can run 10% on just adding things. Because that client perhaps has monies available and they like nice things, and well, they just keep coming up with ideas and we just execute.
Can we guess?
No. Maybe after the meeting. But basically, that's a risk that we would be able to control together, right? So we would say, no more changes from staff, or perhaps a minor change. You know, we painted one color, maybe we try to minimize those things, right?
So when there's changes requested, how is that handled? Like, does it go through the president, does it go through Mr. Novato?
Well, I think we established a mechanism, small things, you know, that are $10,000 or, you know, I think 50,000, up to 50,000, we were going to look at it administratively, we're gonna run it through to Rick Lovato, but we're gonna expedite, because some minor things cannot wait 2 weeks, and they're small, right?
You're gonna run those through,
Through Mr. Lovato and physical plant.
wait, you're gonna run them through,
No,
It's
Mr.
50,000
Novato.
and less.
no, you're going, I'm not asking you, you're
Oh,
going
you're
to run
telling
them through, he can do, but he better be talking to this guy.
Yes, sir, yes. sir.
Okay, don't say run it through him, run it through the president.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think what he means is the president, he will inform the president, but they're coordinating so
Well, yeah,
they
coordinate,
don't,
but,
so that they don't delay the
but
project.
this is the guy.
And we
that will
normally
say,
do
yeah.
to meet with Dr. Serrata anytime
Yeah.
that there is a change in the plan, so.
Yeah.
And again, right, so but anything major obviously would have to come through this body anyways. That was the original plan. And obviously we can hopefully reduce or almost eliminate all those, and that's a big piece of this. Go ahead.
If I understand correctly, 10% is basically almost your operating philosophy for a conservative estimate. Hey, take care of it. And your general, the way you've looked at what we programmed and what the detail we looked at it, you would say that it's not not a extreme risk, but we're getting more toward reality if we start looking at 5%.
Well,
Because that's something we can control.
yes, but let me put it this way. We're trying to make the numbers work, obviously. You know, if we had a lot more funds, we wouldn't be recommending going to 5% because, you know, because we're
10%
expecting
because that
that.
really makes you feel safe.
Right.
But with 5%, we can all make sure that we pay attention.
And the major risk is that something tremendously large happens, unforeseen happens. So let's say we start digging under the Rio Grande site, and there's a huge petroleum tank that nobody has ever thought of, and that is leaking, and it's a contaminated site. Well, that could be a
Just
significant
out of
issue.
curiosity, is there insurance for unanticipated major thing?
No, sir.
That's
No,
not an insurable action.
Not for us, not for you as an owner, but we did ground penetrator radar on the site, so it's a risk that is highly unlikely to happen.
Yeah, I understand.
Again, we could have do a lot more investigation, but we're spending a lot of money. So we're trying to be intelligent in how to spend the money. The third one, that is called design, there's an omission. So no design drawings are 100% correct. No architect would promise a perfect set of drawings, but there's a standard of care that is part of the profession, and that's kind of the language that is used. Now, they do have an errors and omissions clause in the college, and most clients require, I think, it's a 3 million or 1 million, at least, $2 million. So if there's a major contradiction in the drawings that cannot be built, or there's a, let's say, air conditioner unit that was missed altogether in the drawings. And this is unlikely because we've done reviews and we've done collectively reviews, both your staff, our own group, we have reviewed, but things happen, right? The wrong unit is specified and it doesn't work, and we have to change it, and we have to spend a significant amount. The college has the right and it's in the contract to go for the architect to pay for his mistake. And he wouldn't pay out of his pocket, he would pay out of his insurance. And that happens in life. So I did, for instance, I won't tell you the client, but he was at an airport where we were doing concrete, replacing the asphalt runways with concrete runways. So we're replacing, and there's turns, right? So there was a lot of radius, and as they were doing the actual concrete, they were following drawings, the elevations, right? Well, you had big pockets of water staying. The engineer didn't design the elevations properly, and the water would not go away. And that was a clear mistake, undeniable. Nobody could, we went back with the surveyor, we measured the elevations, they were exactly per the drawing, by tolerances. And so what is the issue there? Well, the contractor needs to remove all the concrete, redo the earthwork, and pour the concrete back. And we're talking, $500,000 of the piece. The engineer didn't argue. They went to their error and submissions and paid the contract.
And then he went and get another job.
Well, again, they probably have that.
At Walmart.
So again, that's the other thing, right? The fourth, higher service, professional services. Let me give you an example of where probably we'll use some of the money there. We had estimates for, say, the materials testing contracts, right? The labs that are going there and measuring concrete compaction and doing densities and all that for the earthwork. We had estimated an amount that is kind of a standard amount. Well, they are also getting very busy here in town, and now they're also increasing their prices because the labor for them is also increasing. So there's going to be a little premium there that we're already accounting for.
Yes.
And so that'll be part of that money of contingency, right? We had an estimation that was kind of a general estimation. Everybody's coming a little higher. That's not a lot of money. Yes, sir.
In your experience, how many people who put contingency funds in that account get any of that money back?
All of it. We're not talking about this is your money and it's not committed. So it's in the books.
You're not catching on to what I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
How much money, in your experience, if somebody puts contingency money into the account, how much do they ever get back? Because it's been my experience that the contractor comes up with right about that amount of money for contingency.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're not letting the contractors know what the contingency is.
Oh, okay.
This is between us. This is an internal pocket. It's not their money yet. It's not committed. When you're working under a CM at risk, which is a different type of contracting, you have contingencies that are open.
They do know
Yes.
that there is
Yes.
a contingency fund.
But on the CM at risk, when you do go CM at risk, you sometimes share the savings on the contingencies. And then there's an incentivization there to do, but we don't, that's a different construction methodology we're not using here. Right now, they don't know what the contingency is. We're obviously gonna be there on your behalf trying to minimize it, because we know that the success of the program predicts upon the management of the contingency.
I'm just trying to meet Dr. Graham's.
No, it is.
You already know this schedule.
Obviously, again, so again,
They could still bring it in.
so is there a risk? So obviously there is, again.
I understand there is a reason. You need a contingency fund, but I just never, you never did answer my question. In your experience, how many people get their contingency money bad.
You see, I work with clients that typically it's because of the owner's request and desires to improve the product, they wanna spend all the money. So when they have let's say that we're remodeling this, they have their base, and then if they still have $100,000, they think of changing the lights.
Now, what you're saying
They
is
spend
that
on it.
contingency money is spent on the purchaser at their discretion. There is,
Yeah,
but,
a portion of it, yes.
so that 10% contingency barring absolute problems is our discretion.
Yeah. And there's always the question of how much money do you want to have left over after a program?
As much as possible.
That's right.
Well, that's a philosophy. There's others that take a different route, and they want to spend every penny of it, most of the time, some clients. Yes, sir.
So you identified oil products going up and steel.
They have been
So
identified.
during the life of the project, what happens to those costs?
They're frozen. I mean, once we have an offer and a contract,
They gotta eat it.
they have to eat. Yeah, they love it. And obviously, there's a lot of speculation here on their part. They play the game. But right now, the prices are locked.
Guarantee you they figured that in.
On the, going back to contingency, of the ones that we've reduced, are you able to kind of like start tracking where we're at? Like say that all of a sudden you found out that this issue happened and now you've got to spend X number of dollars for the contingency, so now you've got, a little bit less, and yeah, do you have a way of anticipating that we're gonna run to, we've already depleted the contingency and there's maybe another issue, so.
Absolutely. We're tracking every penny of the program. We never show you the level of detail where we have.
Right.
These are roll-up spreadsheets, but every box has a good number of them. The good news is, once we get out of the ground, for instance, the unforeseens are greatly reduced. There's a couple of unforeseens always, like Pablo alluded to, the TDL, the ADA specialist comes to the site at the end of the project when it's being built, and then he walks the site and he measures and he does all kinds of things, evaluates the code, and then sometimes he says, you see this you give an example of the stairwell needs an additional something, an ending that is curved or something along those lines. Small money. We're talking small money. Sidewalks sometimes have to be done because you have to keep certain slopes, certain grades, and so the drawings have been reviewed already, and the construction should match the drawings, but there's always little things that happen, and it's hard to catch every single inch of construction. But that's one expense, and we're being fully open. But once you're out of the ground and you don't have anything that you cannot see, though, that contingency starts to be realized. You realize now that's eliminated. If you eliminate additional scope, if you eliminate anything underground, and by then we have all of the professional services contracted, we're beginning to feel good. I'm not saying zero money, sometimes, okay, furniture, somebody decides to have a better fabric or something, well, there's money there, but can be controlled, So I guess, it requires, and I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but it requires a little bit more explanation, I think, to give you a better understanding of how we intend to manage. Now, the big risk obviously is the next two projects that need to be bid, and we have no control over those two yet. We have greatly reduced one, or significantly reduced one to be on budget. We think we're going to be close. We used, I'm still going to thunder.
No, you're fine.
But we used for the Northwest, we used the lowest, the numbers that we're using to track, the lowest responsible bidder, which was quite high, as you show, 49%, at a tremendous cost of $250 per square feet. We're using that number with the new building. So we think we're going to be close. In Misión del Paso, we have done a lot of things to reduce the cost, working closely with Mr. Robato and Ruben. We kind of identified fluff, if you will, some of the things that were kind of a little out of the ordinary, we try to reduce them. I mean, we might have to go into another effort with that, another iteration, because we're tracking a little bit higher, but we're still not sure, so we're doing that evaluation. We're doing all that, in my professional estimation, all that can be done at this point to manage it. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
Well, look, you have the figures on the next project.
For this year, that will be tomorrow.
Oh, that's the one tomorrow.
But that's
As far as
just,
the estimates, I'm sorry,
Estimates.
yeah, I get it, as far as the estimates.
So-
The actual proposal.
Based on, it really, our strategy on this is based on the estimates. If they are like 5% over or something, it's okay, we'll go ahead and put it out there. But if they're much more than that, we're gonna have to regroup. Because we really don't want to put it out there knowingly that we're considerable amount over.
And it's for that reason, if you don't mind the interruption, it's for that reason that they recommended that we put out Northwest first. Because they feel more comfortable with Northwest. So we expect that.
Is it because we've already been through the
Yes,
Northwest
yes,
ones?
yes. Even though those numbers are January numbers, and
Yeah.
we're in April. Right, so we're thinking of putting it on the streets a week from Monday.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
that's normal.
and all indications is, again, in coordination with Ruben, who has a pulse and discusses things with other purchasing agents within the region, that right now, we gotta move forward, we gotta push, because we've been investigating,
It's only gonna get worse.
yes, Isleta is coming
Exactly.
right behind us, and
EPISD,
EPISD, I think, are moving forward, so it's not gonna get any better. It's, I mean, some of the out-of-towners are gonna come with some of their out-of-town subs and all that, but it's still gonna cost more money because they gotta pay for, living expenses and whatnot, right?
So may I add something to what these gentlemen have said about the use of contingency? I think it is my responsibility also to inform you that if, should we fail to have the $3.6 million available to supplement the Rio Grande project, we would have to take that from institutional fund. And right now, we do not have 3.6 million. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, because it would have to be taken from institutional funds, potentially from any increase that at the end of the fiscal year we earmark to fund balance. And so just wanted to kind of let you know about that. Well, I mean, it's like there is a risk. I mean, there is a risk. It's been, I think it needs to be put on the table.
Oh, no,
I would be totally
appreciate
remiss if I did not let you know, as your CFO, that there is a risk that the 3.6 will not be available. If it's not available, and we already started the project, we have to have that 3.6 available from other sources.
Can you go to that, 2 more slides forward, what we're talking about, the institutional funds?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, and so that's what you're saying, is if we can't get that
Correct.
3.6 out there.
Correct. We would have to take it, if this
But
project
we are,
goes forward.
but you're saying that right now, we're getting
7.
we're getting 2.7.
Yes, sir.
And so anything we're under the 3.68, we're gonna have to boost the 2.7 higher. No,
Correct. Well, actually, right now, we have 2.7. The 3.6 is being proposed for
yeah, and that's what I'm
contingency.
saying, you're saying we got 2.7,
Yeah.
but if we can come in at, instead of 3.6 is 2.68, then we're gonna have to grab another million from this the lower section right there.
I'm sorry. I'm not
Instead of
following.
3.68, it now it becomes, we only realize 2.68.
Correct.
Then we'd have
Correct.
to be aggregating
Exactly.
3.712 for the
Yes, sir.
residual funds.
That's right.
Okay, so you're saying base funding is 115 million, and sales stamp is set, bond interest is set, additional appropriate.
And the bond interest could also be higher than 2 million. I think we are confident that our bond interest actually will be higher than 2 million. So we are being conservative with the bond interest here.
You think it's gonna be hard?
Additional.
Yes, it will be higher. I believe it will be higher.
Questions? I think might be a good time for us to go to executive.
But thank you, that's a very thorough.
Well, they're not going anywhere, so don't take a minute.
From this business here.
We'll ask, of course, Chauncey, Mr. Garrido, you all please stay. Oh, Mr. Smith, you can come in. Mr. Lobalo. Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what Pat Reed?
I'm happy. If you want me to.
I don't know.
Oh, sure. The board will now go into executive session at any time during the meeting. The board of trustees may conduct an executive session or closed session pursuant to chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code for one or more of the following reasons: consultation with attorneys, to receive legal advice or consultation regarding pending or contemplated litigation, or for a purpose authorized by law, discussion about the value or transfer of real property, discussion about a prospective gift or donation, consideration of specific personnel matters, discussion about security personnel devices, or discussion of certain economic development matters. The board may also announce that it will go into executive session on any item listed on its agenda if subject matters permitted for a closed session by provisions of chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. Any vote regarding these items shall be taken in open session. Oh, the board is now back in regular order.
Are you ready?
Mr. McKinney?
Ready.
Okay. Oh, Dr. Graham,
I
you
make a motion that we authorize the president and his staff to begin negotiations and contingent on approval of the rezoning application of the city of El Paso, execute a contract with the Arrow Building Corporation for construction service.
Second.
For the Rio Grande campus.
Second.
Got a motion, second, any questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
At our next meeting, you're gonna give, update us on the proposal that's out now, or we'll get to close tomorrow, is that right? No?
They will have estimates, but we won't have the bids.
Or we'll have, and gotta put, okay.
And one of the reasons we have negotiations here also means that we're gonna actually go to Arrow and talk to maybe GLC anything that we can. So we're not giving up on even getting a few more cuts, if that makes sense. Very good, thank you.
Good job, thank you.
Chair, next meeting, we have the board retreat. I know that everyone has given their survey to Vice President
Where do we have?
Henley. Ms. Solis emailed it. Ms. Nahara is not able to get to it on her system. She's out of town. But we have 6 to 7. We will start tomorrow at 1:30. We will go till 7, and then we will reconvene at 8:30 on Saturday, and we will end by 4. Next regular board, after the retreat, the next regular, the Facilities and Finance is scheduled for Tuesday the 24th at 4 o'clock, and then the regular board meeting at 5:30. Thank you, members. We'll see if Pam is done with vacation by
Motion adjourned? Okay, we got,